Welcome back, cruisers.
In this video, we're going to cover why we believe crew transfers matter, how they affect cruising confidence, and how the people being transferred are coping with it.
And at the end of the video, we'll talk about what you can do to stay safer on board.
Okay, a quick warning right up front. We're going to be talking about some sensitive issues, and you're likely not going to agree with us on everything. And that's okay. We believe it's more important to look into what's happening than to look the other way for the sake of cruising. Let's start with why cruise transfers are a brilliant solution to a difficult problem.
And then we'll talk about why we feel that they're so dangerous for the crew.
When you think about it, a crew member that is tested positive immediately becomes a drain on their ship. They're already understaffed ship. Not only can they no longer produce, but now they also require isolation, additional resources, and monitoring.
Most destinations are now requiring ships to have a COVID positive percentage under 1%. So moving positive crew to different ships does make a lot of sense. And the CDC's color coding system for rating cruise ship safety is also based on the percentage of positive cases on board.
So from the cruise line's position, transfers solve a number of problems. It's easier to take care of sick crew if they're also not having to deal with passengers at the same time.
Also, transferring them to a quarantine ship frees up space for a healthy crew to be brought on board.
Removing one or two positive crew members can substantially reduce the percentage during this time of reduced passenger loads.
I know that many in the comments, even some other channels, claim that the large numbers being moved are mostly close contacts and not COVID positive crew.
I get it. Seeing a couple hundred positive crew being removed at each port is hard to watch. It suggests things are worse than you might have imagined. I guess it makes it a little bit more palatable if you think that most of them are just close contacts.
There was even a merchant in St. Martin that suggested that with only 5 COVID positive crew, that it would equal 100 close contacts having to be moved into quarantine. And actually on the surface, that seems logical. Crew live in close quarters, and between serving passengers and interacting with the coworkers, I'm sure they come in close contact with at least 20 people a day.
At least.
But there's a big problem with assuming the transfers are mostly close contacts. When you watch the videos, there's no social distancing between the crew members that are being transferred. All their luggage are just thrown together on the pier. They lined up shoulder to shoulder and waiting for their turn to climb into the bus or the boat or across the pier together.
Yeah, I would think if you had COVID positive and close contacts in the same thing, you'd want to isolate them from each other so you don't give your COVID negative test close contacts the opportunity to get COVID.
Right. And the statement Royal Caribbean made in USA Today after our video was released said that the cruise line transferred approximately 100 asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic crew to the Rhapsody of the Seas on January 5th. There was no mention in the statement of close contacts being transferred, though.
Right. Remember, close contacts only need a COVID negative test, 24 hours of isolation, and then another COVID negative test, and then they can return to work. If you put them on a COVID ship, along with all the COVID positive ones, you increase their exposure rate and you extend the time before they can come back to the ship and get back to work. So it's not likely you're moving close contacts along with the actual COVID positive crew.
Right.
Now let's look beyond who's being transferred and talk about how they're being transferred.
Right. And as you watch these clips, keep in mind, these are someone's mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters.
Yeah, every single transfer we witnessed occurred under the cover of night. In St. Martin, just after the 10 p.m. curfew, 300 crew members were led down the gangway, lined up, given a number, and loaded into a van to be transferred by drivers that were covered in full PPE, with their faces covered. They didn't even know who they were.
Yeah, I can't imagine being told that I was infected with potentially deadly virus and being sent into an unfamiliar place and isolated for the next few weeks. And that was the safest transfer that we saw.
In the Bahamas at 3 a.m., during 30-knot winds and waves crashing over the pier, we watched 250 crew being transferred.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our ship was used to shield the crew from being swept right off the pier. But both the vision of the seas and the allure of the seas were, they were battered.
In the rough surf. And we never even got to get off. That was at Coco Cay. We never even got to get off there because they deemed it too dangerous. A full 8 hours later, they finally deemed it was too dangerous for the passengers to get on that same pier that during the rougher weather during the morning, they transferred 250 crew.
And it was too dangerous to get off on the pier?
Yeah, in the middle of that storm, the vision even broke several of their dock lines and had to drop anchor at the pier to keep from being swept away.
It was crazy. Yeah, and the third transfer, roughly 18 hours later, just off of Coco Cay?
Yeah. The winds had died down quite a bit, and this time they tried using lifeboats to transfer the crew. I say tried because it eventually was called off because it was deemed too dangerous because of the rough surf.
Right. And the last transfer we caught was again in the middle of the night just off of Coco Cay.
Yeah, this time they were able to load the crew into the lifeboats. However, we watched in disbelief as the crew were forced to climb a rope ladder to board the Allure. Shockingly, they weren't even wearing life jackets during this late night sea transfer.
Yeah, I don't understand why they just can't do the transfers in a little bit less risky manner.
Yeah, maybe they're doing them in the middle of the night simply for scheduling reasons. I mean, most of the passengers are asleep, and that's got to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like they should just dock safely and transfer the sick with respect. It's a worldwide pandemic, and it doesn't really need to be hidden.
Right. Every passenger on the cruise chose to spend their hard-earned money to be there. Some, not all, weighed the risk of cruising during the pandemic with the information that was available.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard over and over again that cruise ships are the safest place because almost everyone is vaccinated. There just needs to be transparency, and there's no really good reason to hide what's going on.
If your local grocery store was having these same issues, you'd want to know about it, wouldn't you? I mean, think about it. You're only in there for 2 hours a week, maybe. On the cruise ship, you're on board for 8 days, 7 days, 4 days, whatever your cruise is, but you're not getting off. Don't you want to know what's happening there before you go there?
Yeah, that's all this is about. Just something we saw, and we wanted to share it. The next topic we probably should talk about is what the crew are having to endure just to keep us cruising.
But before we go into what we heard over the last 5 cruises, I want to point out that the crew work for the cruise liner, and just like in any work environment, you're going to have disgruntled employees and you're going to have company line employees. So take everything we're about to tell you with a grain of salt.
Yeah, we also should not mention any crew names or positions to keep the crew that we spoke with anonymous.
Definitely. One minor change on cruises that you may or may not have noticed is that all of the pain relievers have been removed from the onboard shops. They're not in the vending machines anymore. They're not in the stores. They're gone.
Yeah, I mean, we've been told that this was to help encourage passengers suffering with what could be COVID-like symptoms to contact the medical center and not just try to self-medicate.
So as you can imagine, crew also no longer have access to painkillers on the ship without first contacting the medical center. And for crew, that means a simple headache could trigger an automatic COVID test, a 24-hour period of isolation until they can get another COVID negative test before they can return to work. So
Yeah.
even a simple headache can be massive for them.
Yeah, so not surprisingly, painkillers have become a bit of a luxury item on board. Every time we told a crew member we're going offshore and asked if there was something that we could bring back for them, the response was always a whispered, Tylenol or Advil, please. And they did also let us know, just for a little headache. Yeah, I mean, you felt bad.
And another thing we heard from more than one crew member is that since the transfer, they're basically living out of their suitcases.
Yeah, they keep all of their possessions packed because from minute to minute, they don't know if they're going to be transferred next.
Yeah. The daily COVID testing and the increased workload is definitely wearing on some of the crew members.
Yeah, and remember, they don't have a choice. If they test positive, they're going to be sent to the quarantine ship. We were also told of a crew member that recently quit the day after returning from the quarantine ship. They were so unhappy with their experience that they ended their contract just so they could be home with their family.
By far, the saddest stories we heard were about crew suicides.
Yeah, I mean, we were told of 3 crew members that apparently jumped overboard just while during quarantine. The crew that shared this story with us speculated that the isolation just might have been too much for them.
Yeah, we were told of one of the crew that jumped overboard actually escaped their room while their door was unlocked during a mealtime.
Yeah, and I mean, we've heard of many stories in the past of people or crew member jumping overboard and things like that, but never so many in a short period of time.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. While in St. Martin, I overheard a few crew members talking while they were watching the transfer. One was visibly upset about the concept of being transferred, while the other one said it was like having a 2-week paid vacation.
They were dressed in uniform from different departments and appeared to be from different countries. So I'm sure culture and status play into the perception of what's going on a little bit. Okay, lastly, I think on cruiser safety, we've been cruising for almost 30 years, and yeah, you can get sick on cruise. That was true before COVID, and it still is true. But I think Royal Caribbean is doing more now than ever in the past to provide a clean and safe environment so that we can all enjoy the cruise. They've sanitized everything constantly, and the crew are fully vaccinated, including their booster. They're sailing multiple ships without paying passengers to quarantine their sick crew away from the rest of us so we can continue to cruise. However, your fate's in your own hands, quite literally. I mean, here's the things you can do to stay safe on the cruise ship.
Wash your hands. There's hand sanitizers everywhere. At the entrance to every restaurant, lounge, bar, anywhere, there's hand sanitizers. Please use them.
Yeah, literally everywhere. One guy I saw, he was arguing with the person checking him in at the windjammer because he came from a different part of the ship. He just washed his hands. He wasn't washing them again. Who cares? Wash your hands. Wear your mask. That's another thing. Just wear your mask. If you are going to be around other people, wear your mask. Who cares? Just do it.
And whether you believe it helps or not with COVID, it could easily prevent you from getting a cold, which can ruin your cruise just as quickly.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's only in the public areas to get to and from. You don't have to wear them outside, just inside.
Right. The next thing, keep your distance. A little bit of social distancing isn't going to hurt you. Don't stand on top of the person in front of you in the dessert line. Give them a little bit of space.
Yeah, that's true.
In the shows, don't sit so close to someone else that you need to fight over the armrest between you. I mean, a little distancing helps.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads into the next one. Don't get into a crowded elevator. I can't tell you how many times we saw people get into an elevator that was already overloaded just so they could get to dinner or a show a little bit quicker. I mean, there's going to be another elevator in just a minute or two. Okay. This last one is kind of a big deal. After you get your COVID negative test 48 hours before the cruise, consider self-isolating. I mean, you don't want to be the passenger that's bringing the COVID to the ship. And in that 24 or 48 hours after your negative test, how many people are you going to come in contact through the course of your day, your travels, just to get to the ship? I mean, it could be 20 or 30 people easily, and you have no idea if they have COVID or not.
I mean, what is the purpose of that 48-hour negative COVID test if you're then going to be out in the public and then heading to the ship? Because you don't know if you pick it up.
Right. And remember, the crew on board, they're vaccinated, boosted, and haven't been able to go on shore leave for months. They're not the cause of the spike of COVID on the ship. It has to be the passengers bringing it on board.
You need to protect the crew.
Yeah, and yourself. Like, follow those steps and you'll have a great cruise and you won't have to worry about getting sick as much. Okay, so that's the end of our rant/suggestion section. Please, if you're lucky enough to be on a cruise right now, show a little love to your crew members. They're living a completely different life below deck and working their butts off to make sure you still have a good time on deck near the pool and wherever else you go.
Yeah, I mean, ask them anytime you're ready to go off. Just say, hey, can I get you something? What do you need? What do you want? Most of the time they're going to say nothing, or they're going to ask for some kind of medication. But
we don't recommend you doing that, obviously. But either way, thank you guys for watching. We look forward to seeing you on board. Bye for now.
Till next time.
Hi guys, I hope you liked our video. If you did, please consider subscribing, leaving a like, and hitting the notification bell. And make sure you share this video with your friends because it helps out a ton and it keeps the algorithm happy. Bye!